What's up guys, Cloudie here checking in from the America server, and today we're gonna be looking at the ARCDIM raids, the newest addition to the game where you can obtain Technomagic enchantment gear, so that's why it's also called Technomagic enchantment raid. This should unlock after 10.9 I believe, and you can access it through the portal here. As you can see, you will be fighting Gundams, I mean robots here, Red Gundam and Blue Gundam, and we can just quickly get there. We have a normal ARCDIM raid and we have an ARCDIM X raid. ARCDIM is, by the way, an acronym which you can see in the monster index. I just like to call it ARCDIM because it's easier to pronounce. Also, before we get to it, big shout out to Manny, Yon and Weiteam. Their insights and patience really helped with getting this stuff done, especially when I had to test my steams. But let's see how this works. So in ARCDIM raids, you have to fight two bosses. First, you will have to fight red, and then you have to fight blue. This is done in auto mode, so auto friendly characters are better to have, and you need to have a team of 4 characters. When red is defeated, then the second team goes in and fights blue, again 4 people on auto mode, or 4 characters on auto mode. The difference between ARCDIM raid and ARCDIM X raid is they both have 3 stages, which says the difficulty, but ARCDIM X, on top of being a bit harder, also restricts your characters that red can only be fought by physical damage type, so all your tank, your supports and your DPS needs to be physical, and blue needs to be magical. So that's the difference. And yeah, okay, let's go check out what these bosses can do, and then I will talk about their skills a bit, and at the end we will look into a full run where I can talk a bit about the strategies on how to deal with these bosses. Before we get to it, one more thing is that ARCDIM raids are fairly easy to do, but they don't drop that good enchantment materials. ARCDIM X is really where the stuff is at. At least you should try and do ARCDIM stage 2. I have done that with my alts, which are a few months old and have 0 money spent on them, and they can do this alone on their own. So yeah, ARCDIM 2 is not terribly hard. ARCDIM stage 3 is a bit, or ARCDIM X stage 3 is a bit harder. I don't think you can have budget teams there because the DPS checks are fairly steep for that, and the gear checks. But it's, if you have a decently built team for that damage type, then it should be more than doable. But alright, let's head over to their skills and see what they can do. So let's look at red first and see what they can do, or what the boss does. And this is actually one of my caveats or issues, that you always have to go first with red. So if you are trying to set up your blue team, then you always have to wait the 2-3 minutes until team red finishes, and only then can team blue start, which means that if your blue team wipes in like 5 seconds, then you just wasted 2-3 minutes of watching red team. So that's kind of annoying. Would be nice if you could swap things around, but yeah, whatever. Let's see. We are checking with the passive skill first because this is shared among the 2 bosses. So let's see, they are not affected by speed or defense reduction effects, which means you cannot defense shred them. You either need penetration or you need ignore defense heroes. I think the bosses do not have terribly high defense, so you don't need too much penetration, but some will definitely help. Or of course, ignore defense heroes are the well, the shizzle round nowadays. Let's see, the bosses are immune to damage taken boost effects, so your regular magic or physical damage amp, but you can still use like non-hero damage, boss damage, and pretty much all the stuff that goes onto your own heroes instead of onto the boss. And on top of this, the bosses have high crit resistance. On stage 1 this is 300, so 30%. At stage 3 this goes up to 50% I believe, so you will need either increased crit chance or debuffs that reduce their crit resistance, or you can run with certain heroes that do have always crit skill, so that also works. And on top of this also the bosses will ignore your damage reduction effects, which means your toughness basically. So toughness runes, I believe Technomagic lines that says takes reduced damage from certain types of damage, And as far as I know, both stuff like Evans or Share's damage reduction is also affected by this, so the bosses just do more damage to you than they do normally. And yeah, let's go up to their active skills, because those are the ones that are different for both of these bosses. Also important to point out here that red does physical damage, blue does magic damage, but you probably already figured this out. So on the left you should see Soul Blade Cutter coming up, which deals physical damage to enemies in the backline, so important this does in your backline only, over 8 times, and each of these hits will inflict a stack of bleed. Bleed deals massive physical damage, and they aren't kidding about the massive part, to the target every second, stacking up to a maximum of 100 times. You don't really have to worry about stacking more than 8, because if you do not cleanse it, you will probably die. It's very hard to stay alive even with 8 stacks. Some very strong healers can do so, but it's hard, especially because you are on auto. So long story short, you need a cleanse for this one. Also with bleed effects, as far as I know, block doesn't work on them, but your defense still does. So HP and defense will be a good friend of yours here. Otherwise you will die. Yeah, cleanse and being tanky is the name of the game, really. Moving on to his other active skill, Blade Spiral it is called, and has a very long description. So let's see. Attacks nearby enemies in a circle or range of self, dealing physical damage and greatly increasing own dodge chance for the duration of the skill. This attack lasts until the boss takes a certain number of hits, and it becomes stronger over time. So this will hurt your melee and your tank a lot, and it's your tank that is most likely to die from this, because if you are using a melee DPS, they will probably lifesteal them back to full anyway. So your melee DPS shouldn't be dying from this, but your tank probably will, unless he gets healed. When the number of hits is all consumed, the boss becomes neutralized for a certain period of time and takes greatly increased damage. So if you do enough hits to get this hit shield down, then the boss will take more damage. It's not really a shield, because he still takes damage during. Additionally, when there are no targets hit by the attack for a certain period of time, it is automatically dispelled. So if you are, for instance, only running a tank and you put a golden mask on him, then the mask proccing during this Beyblade skill will stop the skill. Basically, you do not get the knockdown effect, the increased damage, but it will also stop the whole increased dodge chancing, and it will stop killing your tank. So that's actually a valid strategy to deal with this boss if you are running a ranged DPS. If you have a melee, or if you don't want to do this, then you will need to deal with the extra dodge chance. There are artifacts that can do this, and I believe there are dodge chance reduction effects maybe as well. Or of course certain heroes like archers have greatly increased accuracy in their perks, so that's definitely a way to go. Or of course there are heroes like Cecilia who will always hit, and so can ignore this mechanic of the boss. Now moving on, the boss has 2 phase changes. One is at 66% and the other is at 33%. So this will increase the damage and the range of the boss's attacks, and then the second one will increase the boss's attack and attack speed, and this is becoming stronger over time. So basically this is like a soft enrage mechanic. After you hit 33%, you want to kill the boss really fast, otherwise it will eat you out of existence. Not terribly complicated, but you need to have a team that can deal with these mechanics, especially the dot effect. That's really tough on your backline, and during the showcase run I will talk about a few things about this. And the other skill, the Blade Spiral, is mainly hurting your tank, so yeah, have to be prepared for both of these. Not super complicated, but we are on auto, so that's something we need to deal with. But okay, let's go over to Team Blue then. So Blue Gundam will... Oh, I could have just switched there, right? Let's see. So we can switch here to see the skills. Blue Gundam does magic damage and has a few different abilities. The first one is a Charge Blast Cannon, which will deal damage in a straight line and knock down targets for 5 seconds. This has a 15-second cooldown, so this is a bit of a nuke that comes with a knockdown. If you have CC immunity, which you probably should have done, this will not really be a big deal to you. Of course, it helps if you have the immunity in the first place. Now, the second one is more interesting. Meteor Prison of Extinction has a great name. Attacks frontal enemies in a circular range of self to deal magical damage. Each hit reduces the target's heal rate and destroys shield effects. So you will be healing less and your shields will be instantly gone. This also affects undispellable shields, but magic doesn't have too many of those, like maybe only Shamilla, I think, and Lucikiel. Yeah, Shamilla and Lucikiel. The heal rate reduction effect stacks up to a maximum of 100 times and is also removable. So this is not a skill that you can cleanse. This attack lasts until the boss takes a certain number of hits and it becomes stronger over time. So this is a continuous damage over the entire area, which will reduce your healing and destroy your shields. When the number of hits is all consumed, the boss becomes neutralized for a certain period of time and takes greatly increased damage. The number of hits and heal rate reduction increase as the difficulty rises. So at stage 1 this is 140 and 0.5%. I'm not certain but how far this goes up, but you can actually counter the heal rate reduction with recovery, which is a stat you can get either from Vel'Khazar runes. Some of them have this stat. You can get it from Black Dragon enchant scrolls if you are not running full technomagic gear yet, or you can get it on unique treasures. And depending on what you are running and how fast you are clearing, this can be very beneficial, because the last 30 seconds or so of the fight you will not be getting any heals at all. That's pretty much where you usually cap out. But with the recovery stat you will still be getting heals and like a meaningful amount, so your characters will not die. There are of course other characters like Jane or for instance Saria, who is decent here, who have heal rate increase built into their kit, so that kind of works. But yeah, recovery is a really good stat, especially on your backliners, to keep them alive. The other way around this is of course Isaiah, whose invincibility will stop the effect from going up, so she can be used to counter this here, and her other buffs like her boss damage increase is still useful here. Also her M doesn't work. So yeah, that's an interesting mechanic here, and of course you need to do multi-hits on this, of course, to remove the shield. Yeah, some heroes are better at it, some heroes are worse, but that's the gist of it. This boss also has a third skill, which is another nuke, and this not only does damage but reduces your magic defense by 30%, and this is something you want to cleanse. Now there is no cooldown shown here, but he doesn't cast any skills while he's doing this prison stuff, so basically you will not see this during the prison, but you need to cleanse it once. I personally run my Jane with the cleanse perk and then it just gets removed, so there is that. And then the boss also has two phase transitions at 66 and 33%. This reduces all the damage it takes, and then yeah, that's all. Sorry, I was reading the wrong skill. So both times it reduces the damage it takes with this shield effect, essentially making it harder to clear. We also have to consider that meanwhile your heal rate is constantly dropping, so bursting down this is a bit harder to do. Yeah, but the mechanics themselves are not that hard, and the boss hits a lot less hard than the physical one, I believe. So you are less likely to die early on, but later when you run out of healing you can get yeeted out of existence, so that's something to consider. Yeah, you both have to have decent DPS to clear this, and you need to be able to survive at the very end when you no longer heal. But again, recovery stat will be your big friend here. But okay, these are the base skills. Let's switch over to the actual run that I did, and then maybe I can give you a few hints and tips on how to deal with these bosses. So looking at the clear here, I don't really want to recommend specific characters. I believe there is an actual tier list out there, but to be honest, I'm not really a fan of those. I'll just tell you about the mechanics instead. So you will need about a good 350 million plus DPS to clear this on time, and it helps if your tank has a 200k plus physical defense and at least 1k plus block chance. Also, this goes for both bosses. You can utilize dodge chance, which will greatly reduce the damage you take from the boss, so that's a big thing. And what also really does help with the damage part is attack reduction. For the tank part here, as far as I could see, Cloudie and Philip surprisingly are really good, bringing crit chance, crit resist reduction, dodge reduction, so that really works well here. And Gao for the extra cleanse is also quite nice. Now the absolute cornerstone of the run is Estelle. Her kit is super loaded. Just get her. Do not run without Estelle. She's just so good here. Especially do not forget her tier 2 perk, which gives accuracy to the team. Now depending on your DPS needs to be someone who is a fast hitter. Chase is an absolute monster. There is Celine who is really good. DLK, Cecilia, Cloudie can clear this. So there are plenty of options. If you are running a ranged DPS, then they will be exposed to this dot effect that you can see here now. And that really helps if you, instead of Evan, if you have a strong Evan, you can bring Evan, who is a very strong contender here. The other option is Mediana with the S3 cooldown reduction TM gear, which with the right perks allows her to give the undying buff not only to your DPS, but to herself as well. And with enough cooldown reduction, she will never run out of it really. So basically, they will not get yeeted even with lower defensive stats. So that's a really good strategy that I have seen. Otherwise, yeah, you can roll with Evan, but he needs to be quite a bit buffed to be able to heal your tank. You can see the Beyblade damage. As I said, the golden mask here is really useful. Now moving on to the magic team, and this was harder for me. I've recorded this with Frey, as you can see, but since then I've switched her out to May, which improved my clear time by about 30 seconds, which is quite a lot actually. It's a really lot. It makes the end where you barely hear so much easier, because you just get there so much faster. Shea is really useful here because she gives the mana, she gives some extra damage, and she has a fairly continuous heal. Mine is not geared super well. This is an old gear that I changed a bit to be more tanky, so she has some block. And Seria is fairly reasonably good. Her hit count is super low, but she at least always crits, so she does decent-ish damage. There are other heroes like Lucikiel or Gremory who can, I believe, clear this faster and easier. You can see on the stacks going up on my two healers there. Yeah, but thanks to Fallen Frey is good because she, with her unique weapon, she has a fairly constant healing output, even though she is not a really healing specialized character. She's more about her shield, which doesn't work here at all, but because she does a lot of healing thanks to her unique weapon, it does kind of work out. But again, if you have a Mei, then she does wonders here. I would say she is the superstar of this battle right now because of the crit chance increase from her UT2 or the magic defense increase from her UT1, which I run because Seria always crits. Her constant healing is very nice, the extra mana is really nice. So yeah, definitely Mei is super powerful here. Yeah. Other than that, Shell is also good, as I mentioned. There are options with like running Love Reel, for instance, or Isaiah. Isaiah can work too. Although for Isaiah, I think you want to have a ranged DPS because otherwise she will just teleport to the front line and her buff will never hit the backliner, which means that they will have a harder time to survive. But you can make it work with like enough recovery bonus. It's just it was harder for me to survive on the backline. You can see that like my share is dropping a bit there. But yeah, this is the run really. High hit count heroes are really the key here, and just having enough auto healing to make it through the day. again, Shea and Mei are a very powerful combination, and as said, I was able to clear with them so much faster than this run is. Actually, one other thing to note is that the blue team's DPS counter depends, already starts running when red team is running. So you see lower numbers here. And that's interesting because it's hard to tell you how much DPS you need to actually clear this. What you see right now is more or less good. You need to have about 1 minute left for the final phase. If you are if you are doing the phase switch before 1 minute is left on the timer, then you are mostly good. You will be able to clear, but the DPS number you see will greatly depend on how fast your red team was clearing. With a slower team, you will see a lower number, even though it's your own clear time with blue will be the same. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, here magic block, magic defense, magic dodge, HP are your friends, and a bit of recovery, especially on those backliners who do not have an extra stat here. But depending on your DPS, you might need some too. And you can see Saria dropping some pretty low numbers there, especially when she is casting her S3. It's good to have constant healing. So Mei with her S2 is really a superstar here. And again, attack reduction, very powerful, non-hero damage, boss damage, all those things that are not straight out amp. And of course, multi-hit. Saria isn't a multi-hit hero, so that doesn't really do her too well, but she can clear this with like a good 20 seconds left with this setup. And with my other setup, she goes like 30 seconds faster, which is so nice. So this was the run really, guys, and the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, this has been Cloudie. Bye bye.